Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Say what? Say what? Say what? One more time.
We commence the proceedings with our signature segment, Say What, where we roll out some of the most wacky, astonishing, damnable, and ultimately revealing statements uttered by politicians and the chattering class. It's been 10 days or so since the Democrats made a show of declaring that President Trump should be impeached for violating the Constitution in his phone call with the Ukrainian president that included the subject of Joe Biden and corruption and self-dealing in Biden's crusade to fire the prosecutor who was investigating the Ukrainian energy firm which put Biden's son Hunter on their board and paid him over $3 million, despite a total complete absence of experience in the industry. They've certainly talked the talk of impeachment, but have yet to back up their bravado by walking the walk, likely because Pelosi knows it's a riverboat gamble that could wind up benefiting Trump. In fact, probably will benefit Trump, since impeachment has been the only item on the Democrats' agenda since the day after Trump was elected president. But listen to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi ooze insincerity in saying this week that she regrets having to pursue impeachment.
We take this to be a very sad time for the American people, for our country. Impeaching a president or having the investigation to impeach a president is not anything to be joyful about. I don't know that anybody's joyful, but it is a sad time.
Note the pregnant 5-second pause. She didn't know what to say because she's between a rock and a hard place, knowing impeachment is demanded by her radical Trump-deranged base, and yet politically fraught with peril. And her job became even more difficult when Trump this week employed his own daring, some have said reckless, strategy. Instead of running away from the Ukraine situation, the president doubled down, saying Ukraine is not the only country who should be investigating Joe Biden.
If they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Biden. They should investigate the Biden. Likewise, China should start an investigation into the Biden. Because what happened in China is just about as bad as what happened with Ukraine.
So what do the Democrats say to that? Well, they don't know what to say because they never expected Trump to actually amplify his call for foreign countries to investigate Biden, just like they never expected him to release the transcript of the call or the complaint from the so-called whistleblower who's been outed as exactly what we knew he was, a deep state intelligence operative who never would have been able to file that complaint for lack of any firsthand knowledge of the call until the requirement of firsthand knowledge was suddenly eliminated right before the complaint was filed. Some coincidence, huh? And now we've also learned that Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff, he of the bug eyes and pencil neck, was contacted first by the whistleblower back in August and sat on the complaint. But he denied it until the New York Times came out with a story this week that saved Schiff the embarrassment of having it revealed by Trump or conservative media. But Schiff was hardly backing down. Instead, he actually threatened Trump, and just like after the Mueller report was released, in case the phone call itself doesn't move the impeachment ball down the field, he can always go after obstruction of justice.
And we want to make it abundantly clear that any effort by the Secretary, by the President, or anyone else to interfere with the Congress's ability to call before it relevant witnesses will be considered as evidence of obstruction of the lawful functions of Congress.
So Schiff, the man who claimed for months on end that he had proof that Trump colluded with Russia, but never produced the goods, is all in on this impeachment inquiry. But the story is starting to crumble as the so-called whistleblower takes a pounding, especially from the most articulate spokesman for Trump other than Trump himself, Stephen Miller.
It's unfortunate that the media continues to describe this individual as a whistleblower, an honorific that this individual most certainly does not deserve. A partisan hit job does not make you a whistleblower just because you go through the Whistleblower Protection Act. If you read the 7-page Little Nancy Drew novel that the whistleblower put together, it drips with condescension, righteous indignation, and contempt for the president. It's also ludicrous on its face. It describes an elaborate cover-up that also, by the way, the president discussed on Sean Hannity, April 25th. What kind of secret cover-up are you also discussing on the airwaves of Fox News? Furthermore, the Inspector General found evidence of political bias in the individual, which is not disputed by anybody.
Of course, the one who likely stands the most to lose in this whole Ukraine thing is Joe Biden, especially now that he's had to start playing defense and explaining away the millions of dollars his son was paid in the immediate aftermath of his visits to Ukraine and China. Biden previously said he never talked to his son about those mega deals, but when asked this week, his story was different as he answered a question about the way Trump described him.
Biden and his son are stone cold crooked. Have you talked to your son about any of this?
I talked to my son. We've communicated. He lives out in California. We communicated a couple times. But look, there is zero evidence of any assertion being made. I'm not going to go into it now. Look, the issue is this president of the United States engaged in something apparent.
Note how quickly he changed the subject. Yeah, I talked to him a couple times. But the real thing is that Trump is committed. Blah, 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 blah. He never addressed the proven facts about Ukraine. And then Biden went on and gave a speech about it, playing exactly the kind of defense Trump tried to force him to play in the first place.
And note that even though every reputable publication has looked at the charge that has been made against me, they found them baseless and untrue and without merit.
Folks, Joe Biden is in deep trouble. He's getting laid bare on Ukraine. His lead in the Democratic presidential race is rapidly collapsing, and the face of the Democratic presidential race has changed perhaps dramatically.